Hello, everyone. Welcome to His Purpose Prevails. My name is Pam. As you can see, today I have a special guest. But before I get into that, I just want to share the background of the name His Purpose Prevails. So, this name is really based on scripture. There's a Bible verse in Proverbs 19:21 that says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." So, this podcast is really meant to be like an integration of me. And so there's so many hats that I wear, so many roles, right? I'm a mother, I'm a mental health therapist, I'm a Christian, I'm a woman, I'm Hmong. And so all of these parts of me will come out. And so a lot of my topics are going to be surrounding things that are relatable to other people who also identify as one or many of these things. So today I have a special guest. Let's just all welcome Jessica. And I want to talk about how we met and what kind of encouraged me or why I got the idea to invite her onto this podcast. So Jessica and I, we did work through WACMA. And when I saw you, Jessica, I was like, she's so bubbly. Like, there's just something about her. You had this confidence and like your smile lit up the room. And so you and I, we had not worked very closely until probably the end of last year and maybe like more the beginning of this year too. But I was like, yeah, I need to get to know her. And then I finally got to see you in person and like we introduced ourselves. But I think one of the turning points or moments in our relationship was when we were on Xiong, Milwaukee, and we just had some really difficult conversations that both you and Malia were facilitating. And so it was at that moment where I was like, okay, I need to get like my video podcast going. And then I learned you had a podcast, which I'll let you share too. But if we could just all give a warm welcome to Jessica, and then if you would just like to tell us about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Pam, for inviting me to your podcast. Um, a little bit about myself, like what Pam mentioned, I do have my own podcast as well. It's called Untamed Minds, and it solely focuses on where I invite like my guest stars to come and share their experiences and how that has shaped their mental health, and talk about mental health challenges. And I just want to be able to, let my audience know that whatever they're going through, they're not alone. So that's the reason why have my own podcast. And a little bit more, yes, I did work with Pam through Walkma. So I'm very, I guess you could say, lucky that I had that opportunity. And another fact about me is that I'm from Milwaukee. So if you're from Milwaukee as well, I would love to connect.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this podcast. You are my, let's see here. I would say like you're my second or third guest. I kind of had my mom on, but yeah, I'm really excited to have you because, as we shared, like I feel like you just there's so many experiences that you have and the younger generation will be able to relate to you too, but like they can look up to you and then just there's just so much that I want to talk with you about today. So thank you. When I had reached out, we were kind of like, well, what's the topic? What are we going to talk about? And so I want to call this podcast like finding your voice. And I think that really stood out to you too. And so in opening, tell us a little bit about your journey and then we'll start to get into the questions.
Yeah, finding my voice, right? That I guess like my journey all the way from the beginning when I was a kid, or like even in high school, I was always very timid. And I think
Mm,
it stems from the fact that, another fun fact about me, I'm the oldest of four in my family. So
okay.
being the oldest, I felt like I've always had this pressure on me, that whatever I say, whatever I speak about, it doesn't get heard. So growing up,
Mm.
it has always shaped me to become very timid about sharing my ideas. I feel like finding my voice was really hard, and I did not know who I was up until recently, actually. I would say once I turned like 24 or even 23, like 2 years ago, that's when I found my purpose, like who I really am, what I want to become. So it's been a rough roller coaster journey. And I think like even now, me finding my voice, I'm not even completely there yet, but I would say that I have found a piece of my voice.
Okay, wow. So this is a new journey that we have the privilege to walk with you on, and we get to hear a little bit
Mhm.
about it. But it was about 2 years ago when you really learned like that you found your voice and you began speaking up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked a little bit about like being the oldest and being more timid. Um, can you share a time with us, like an event or a time when your voice was completely dismissed, where you maybe did try to speak up, or people were just like, we're not even gonna
Yeah.
listen?
hmm Yeah, I think it also, stems from me being a Hmong woman too.
Hmm.
Especially growing up in like a Hmong culture household. My parents were both very traditional. There was a time when we were doing like a just a ceremony, a spiritual ceremony, and I was like very tired, being that oldest child and a daughter, you are expected
Hmm.
to wake up super early, do these different chores while you watch like your brothers like chilling or not doing anything really. And I had expressed
Hmm.
to a couple of the adults at the time, like, I'm tired, like, I don't think I can do these chores. And they completely, just kind of dismissed the way how I felt. And so, obviously these chores that I was doing, I still did it, but I felt like to a point where I felt like I was going to faint. I think it was very excessive.
Mm.
So it was that, yeah, a time when that happened. Yeah, and that was time when I felt like the first time ever when I felt like my voice was completely dismissed. And mind you, I would say about 10, 11 at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you think like the Hmong culture kind of played into that? Because there's so many different layers of that of why Hmong women aren't heard. But so at that time you're the oldest, you're a girl, and you have all of these duties to do. And then you're expressing like, hey, I'm tired, or um maybe I need a break, and they just didn't take you seriously.
hmm Yeah, I feel like especially being a Hmong woman, and growing up in like a traditional household, it really taught me, or like I guess how I was taught growing up was to be submissive or to not
Hmm.
say anything. Whatever the elders say, do as told. So I felt like
Mm.
for a long
Yeah.
time I didn't know that I even had a voice inside of me. Hmm
Wow. I want to add to that. I know for me, I've experienced similar things too. For me, when I did my own therapy, I learned like in a way I'm conditioned to be a people pleaser because I'm conditioned to like not have my own thoughts, do what people say, don't be difficult, don't talk back, right? And so we are taught that it's almost like we don't need to know about your needs or you can't have needs, but you need to meet everyone else's needs. And so then
hmm
we're so good at listening and like being diligent and doing what we're told and being rule followers.
hmm Yeah, no, that's something I can relate to too. Like I am definitely a people pleaser and it's a good and a bad trait, but for me, it I think it comes to like not knowing how to love myself as well because I feel like
Hmm.
once you know how to love yourself, you know your own identity. That's when you find your voice. And growing up, I was never taught how to do that. But I sometimes think about my parents or like the adults in my life at the time. They weren't taught how to do that too, so they didn't even know how to do it. So I try to give them grace. That's why I said like just not
Hmm.
too long ago, that's the time when I finally found who I am and what I want to do and who I want to be in life.
Yeah, so you're seeing that generationally, like this is happening, right? And I think I see that with
Yeah.
the mothers and the wives and the Hmong women is they don't know how to teach us to find our worth because no one taught them to find theirs. And so they're just
hmm
passing on like traditionally what they know. So you said
Exactly.
you had to learn how to love yourself. Like tell me a little bit about how you noticed like maybe I'm not loving myself and then like what were some steps you took to loving yourself?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I think like just recently I've learned, and honestly, it comes from me working with Project Resiliency and
Hmm.
WAGMA. I felt like me working in that field of work really opened my eyes to realizing that, wow, like mental health is a real thing because I never knew
Hmm.
what mental health was. So when working in that field, it's like, okay, I'm learning all these different things. I'm learning how to advocate for people. And then I started
Mm-hmm.
reflecting, like, I'm advocating for all these people. Now, how can I advocate for myself? Right. So
Yeah.
I think that was the turning point in my life where it's like, okay, for me to be able to love myself, I have to unlearn. I have to take out the roots that were planted inside and in me, all the things that I've learned. It's really hard. It's still a process. Sometimes I find myself, kind of having like setbacks where I fall into my old ways, but I always remind
Mm-hmm.
myself like, if I want to do better, I have to change. So it comes with
Yeah.
a lot of accountability, a lot of reflection. And I think that's when I realized like I need to stop being so hard on myself. Like it is okay to
Mm-hmm.
find my own voice and not listen to others all the time. Um, because the life that I'm living, they're not the ones going through it. Like I'm the one going through it. And so I know my own story. They might know bits and pieces, but do they know the full story? Probably not. So I think it's just a lot of learning, educating myself, um,
Yeah.
just like self reassurance.
I love that you touched on unlearning because that's been a new concept for me. My niece and her fiance, Charlotte and Tony, they have a podcast called Unlearning Patterns. So just a little plug for them because I love them and I love their podcast. But you're so right because there's so much ingrained in us in the culture, in the way we were brought up, in our worldview, that we do have to unlearn some of these things. Like, wait, this isn't working for us. Maybe it worked for our parents in the old country, but it doesn't work here now that we're in America and we have
Hmm.
the Western lens and all of that. So, I really appreciate you speaking to that.
Yeah, unlearning patterns. I listen to them too, so I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question for you is, like, what if people are like, oh yes, like we want to advocate for ourselves and we want to love ourselves and speak up, like what would you say is one or two things that works for speaking up and having your voice heard or finding your voice? And then what are like one or two things that probably doesn't work as well?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of things you can try for sure. I guess something
Yeah.
that helps me voice my thoughts better and having it be heard is definitely talking with a clear communication. And with that, like you have to be very, very open-minded and very persistent yet respectful. I think respect is the biggest like hands down platform that you should I guess create when talking to someone or trying to have your voice be heard. And, especially when you're being open minded, the person you're conversing with, they see that. So then it motivates them to also be open minded to your perspectives too. Something that does not work, I would say, is being overly assertive and not listening
Mm-hmm.
to others.
Mm-hmm.
And or like even failing to provide any support for like your ideas. Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people look at you like, oh, she's just talking to talk, like whatever, she's a joke. But the thing is, you have to be stern and respectful, but also talk with a purpose. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's how, from like my own experiences, that's how I got my voice to be heard by my peers or even
Okay.
like family members.
Yeah. So something that helps you were saying is respect, right? Like being
Hmm.
respectful. And I think if you're not respectful, people automatically either get defensive or they shut down. And so I see that a lot with my couples work in therapy. If somebody's trying to say like, "Oh, that hurts when you do this," or "Hey, I really would like to spend time with you." If they're saying like, "You're always on the phone. You never have time for me." Then it's like, "Okay, well, you're not talking respectfully and you're coming at them and they feel attacked and now they're shutting down." And so I love that, like being able to assert yourself in a respectful manner. So I love that. So that's so good. Thank you.
To your point, like word choices, they are very, very important. The way how like you express yourself, it also comes to the different type of word choices that you use. And I would
Mhm.
use like an example, like me and my partner, early, like we've been together for 7 years. So I would say like the first 5 years, we were younger. I just said whatever
Mhm.
came to mind, and I always wonder like why does my partner shut down? Like I don't understand. I feel like I'm talking to a
Mhm.
brick wall. And recently I realized instead of using you statements, I think like we should use statements that are more like, how do you say it, like reflective on both sides.
Hmm.
Like instead of saying, "Oh,
Hmm.
you treat me like this, so yada yada yada," you should say like, "I feel like this because of something that you did." So I think instead of coming off so assertive and so, what is it, so upfront, so direct,
Hmm.
you should, yeah, go in a way where you want to express yourself and have like an actual adult conversation. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. It does. So in like therapy, we call these I statements, like the letter I,
Oh yeah.
right? And so we say so it's like I feel blank because blank, right? So like I feel sad because you're always on your phone, right? So we don't want to start with you, you, because it puts people on the defensive. It's like an attack, right? And so it
Hmm.
feels very much like we're criticizing, and you're saying like we're too blunt, we're too direct, we're too going, like we're going at them. And so if I'm like, you never do this or you always do that, then they just feel like, oh, you're attacking me. And so then they're listening to
Hmm.
only defend, but not to understand. But if you say you're owning it, right? Like I feel sad, I feel hurt, I feel
Hmm.
appreciative, because then they're more open because they're not feeling attacked. So yeah, you're exactly right.
For sure.
Yeah. Something I wanted to say is what I noticed, because like as a people pleaser in recovery, that's what I call myself. Sometimes we're very apologetic. Like it's like we're sad that we even have needs. So we're like when I remember like either asking my boss or asking a friend or asking family, I would be like, I'm so sorry, but like, can you help me with this? And it's like, wait, why am I sorry? But I really did feel sorry
Hmm.
because I never was taught that I can have needs, right? And so where I'm not apologetic anymore. And I see that in clients, and I see that in like even people that approach me. They're like, I'm sorry. Cause it's like, I'm sorry I'm a burden. I'm sorry that you have to help me. I'm sorry that I can't do it myself. And so I would say sometimes that's where we start, but I want us to grow from that. Those of us who are trying to find our voice, don't be sorry. Why are you sorry? It's like you're saying, I'm sorry that I'm alive. And so I really want to
Hmm.
deter our listeners and viewers from being apologetic. It's okay to have needs. Like you're valuable, you're worthy. It's okay to have needs, and it's okay to ask. It's okay to be assertive.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that I can relate to too. Obviously, working, I think like just because work at work, like work is work, right? And you have coworkers
Hmm.
and they have their workload. So when you ask for help, you kind of feel bad to do so. So I totally
Hmm.
understand what you're talking about. And I think I'm gonna go back to me being the oldest child too. Um, I was
Hmm.
expected to be this role model, or I was expected to know my way around. So I was never familiar with asking for help. So when I do ask for help, I feel like a failure. And that all comes with like
Hmm.
me being so hard on myself. But to your point, like, yeah, asking for help is needed. Like people will not know you want help or you need help if you don't ask for it. So it's like asking for help does not mean that you're weak. Asking for help does not mean that you're incapable of doing the things that are like, handed to you. It just means that,
Hmm.
you know, you just need help. Bottom line, you just need help. So I think
Exactly.
asking for help is totally fine. Yeah.
Exactly. I always tell clients like, or those considering therapy, I'm like, it takes courage to ask for help and to get the help. Like you're not brave and strong if you just do it yourself. Like maybe you are to an extent, but it really takes courage to ask for help because we can't do it alone, right? And so yes, I
Hmm.
want us to not be apologetic if we need help, if we need something. Um, and it's true, like Jessica, people can't read our minds. Like maybe some people are nice and they're like checking in, like, hey, I just want to follow up, or hey,
Hmm.
how's everything going? But even then, some of us don't want to ask for help. But like, yeah, I'm learning like my husband can't read my mind. Like I do things for him and I expect those things done. But now I'm learning like now that I'm finding my voice, I'm learning like it's okay for me to have needs. And so I will tell him my needs or my feelings. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you become or
Hmm.
it becomes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it just takes a lot of strength for you to stop feeling apologetic, to ask people
Mhm.
for help. I think that's the hard part. Asking people for help is easy when you stop feeling bad for it. So, yeah,
Mhm.
that's just like my piece. Yeah.
But I think people get so much further in life when they do ask for help. Like yachitsa
Hmm.
moya, like they're not embarrassed or ashamed and they will willingly just ask, right? Like I was
Hmm.
this reminds me a few weeks ago I went fishing and we were on a boat and we were with my brother-in-law and his nephew was on the boat and I don't know if he was like 10 or 11, under 13 I would say. And he was doing his thing, fishing and putting his lure and stuff on. And he would just be like, hey, can you pass me that? Oh, hey, I need that. And like, I was just taken aback at like how confident he was. It wasn't like he was a burden and it's like, oh, just do it yourself. Stop asking me. But that confidence of like, hey, can you get me that? Hey, I need that. Hey, somebody pass me the scissors. I was like, wow, like he's so confident. And I feel like people
Hmm.
who ask for help, they do get further in life because they have more resources. They can humble themselves. They can be like, hey, I don't know how to do this. And so I don't know. I think sometimes when we don't ask for help, we make it harder on ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. When you don't ask for help, you make it harder on yourself and then you end up blaming yourself for it. And I think it comes
I
with
know.
yeah, I don't know the term for it, but then like you start blaming yourself and then you overthink a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
I would say ask for help if needed. It's nothing wrong to ask for help at all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. So another question I have for you is, do you fear or have you feared backlash? Like, not really into like politics and stuff right now, but just even things like, okay, so for example, sometimes I feel like when I speak up for Hmong women's rights, I feel like people will label me as feminist or I'm a man hater or I'm teaching women to like be disobedient or unsubmissive. I don't know. So sometimes I notice like back then I used to be very fearful of it where I didn't speak up, period. But now I know it's like, okay, even if I'm speaking up on some topics that are normally not discussed, I do kind of worry. Like it's like I'm preparing myself mentally for backlash. Have you ever felt that?
Hmm. Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was so scared about speaking up before. I was always scared of backlash. I was scared to be like outcasted. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why I never spoke up. But honestly, if me not
Mm-hmm.
speaking up for the wrongs that I see in this world is gonna make life easier for me, like I don't want that because I'm just lying to myself. Like I know my own
Mm-hmm.
morals. I know what's right and wrong. And if I see something wrong, I find myself stepping up and voicing my own opinions about it now. And the backlash part, who wouldn't be scared about that? But for me, I focus
Mm-hmm.
more on about like the importance of the constructive dialogue and the value of sharing a diverse perspective instead. And personally, if I can stay true to myself and speak up for what I believe in, I'll be okay with other people disagreeing because
Mm-hmm.
disagreements are not always bad. It gives us a chance to examine like their views and help us understand why they
Mm-hmm.
think the way they think. But it all
Right.
comes down to respecting each other's perspectives. So I would say
For sure.
to answer your question, yeah, that's my perspective.
Yeah, I think it just really depends on what arena or what environment we're in. And so, like,
Mhm.
if let's say I'm in school and I'm speaking up on like a person of color perspective, right? I'm not as afraid, but I think it depends on where you're speaking up and what the topic is about too. Because I remember being younger, I would not speak up like to my husband and to my in-laws because I was afraid of being labeled like oh tu nyape or
Mhm.
nyashimlongu or o jani janjo loli like all of these Hmong concepts where they're telling us like um there's these labels attached so then I was afraid
Mhm.
like oh if I do this they won't like me and then eventually that was like fear of abandonment which I'm learning now like oh those were all the fears that kept me bound and kept me silent but see now I've got to a
Mhm.
point in my life where I'm not afraid of what label I would get, and I'm not afraid that like my husband would leave. And if he did leave me, then we cross that bridge when we get there. but I can't live in fear that and live in silence because that feels very limiting and very oppressive. So I'm just wondering, like, have you noticed that there are certain fears that make you not speak up?
Yeah. I mean, labels for sure. I feel like labels, there's, oh my gosh, there's so much stigma around different type of labels, you know? And then like I feel like once you're labeled that, you have to kind of carry like a negative energy around you all the time. I mean, there was a time when I
Mhm.
did speak up. Um, it was like a more personal situation where I saw someone being
Mhm.
mistreated, and it was like a Hmong woman.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
spoke up about it, and the person that was mistreating this Hmong woman, yeah, they called me a feminist. They called me what's the word? It was just like a really bad word in Hmong. I don't think I want to say it.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, that's
they
okay.
called me these things. Yeah, they call me these things, and at the time, like I was hurt. I was like, wow, like I didn't think that speaking up for what I believe in would resort to me being labeled like this, you know? But
Hmm.
like I said, as I grow older, it's just like, you know, people are gonna have their own opinions. Even if you say or don't say anything, people are entitled to their own opinions, and that's the same
Hmm.
way for me too. You know, it's a two-way street. You're entitled to your opinions, so am I. So for me, I've become more confident in like speaking up for whatever I believe in, even if that means like something very small. Yeah, I would speak up
Hmm.
about it. And even if
Yeah.
they were to label me something, I know myself that does not define me. So I kind of just, yeah, remind
Yeah.
myself that.
The mistreatment, like the Hmong women mistreatment, and that's a whole nother, like we could have a whole nother podcast on that.
I know.
Because I just, yeah, it's like instead of taking blame and accountability, we've got to blame this other person and put the focus on them so that it's not on us. So even though that person was mistreating the Hmong woman, it was easier for them to blame you. And then now everyone looks at
Hmm.
you and the attention is off them. So, yeah, what a way to scapegoat. But kudos to you for standing up to that among women. And I don't know if she appreciated it or,
Hmm.
what she felt, but I would be honored if that was me and you stood up for me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can go on and on about this, but it's like I guess like as among women, it can go either way. You can appreciate another woman you know, standing up for you, or second, you can probably be scared or be angry at that Hmong
Hmm.
person standing up for you because it's like, dang, you stood up for me. Now when I go home, this person might do something worse, you know? So it can go
I
both ways,
know.
but the person that I helped, she was definitely appreciative. So I think I'm glad that I can make that I was there to protect that person.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so with finding your voice, I think confidence goes hand in hand. And so I'll be asking some questions
Hmm.
about confidence too, but you can take this wherever you want. But like, I know you said you've been finding your voice within the last 2 years, but then like, how has your confidence grown? Whether it's your confidence grew to speak up or speaking up has caused your confidence to grow.
Yeah, my confidence has grown, I feel like immensely ever since I started finding pieces of myself. Um, I
Hmm.
think speaking up is one of them, but also the physical confidence that I have in myself too. Um, it's just
Hmm.
like, you know, before I was very down. Like I think during pandemic, I was very you know, down, very I was just not happy with the way how I look physically. Um, and
Hmm.
and so just like the past year or so, that's when I started motivating myself, eating healthier, and I think that really made a
Hmm.
change. So I look in the mirror and I see myself differently. Yes, there'll be days where I'll look at myself and the old thoughts would come back, like, oh, I'm not beautiful, or oh my gosh, like I don't like the way how my body looks today. But then the thing is,
Hmm.
I keep like a folder of like old photos of myself when I was like a little bit chubbier, and I think like,
Hmm.
wow, like I'm at a better place where I was at yesterday. So no, I can't complain. But my
Yeah.
confidence in terms of being the person that I want to be, um, I would say it's not 100% there, but I would say like it's the percentage of me being confident has improved a lot from, like 2, 3 years ago when I found myself.
Okay. So a little you shifted something. It was like you changed kind of the way you eat and then that boosted your confidence too.
Yeah, the way how I
Yeah.
eat, I think I started going out more, like going to the park, just connecting myself with nature. I do have a fur baby too. I have a dog, so sometimes I'll take him out on
Oh.
walks. And I think it's just a good way to connect with yourself. Maybe sometimes even going back into your old hobbies or finding new hobbies, it'll help
Mm-hmm.
you learn how to love yourself, and then that will make you more confident.
Yeah. Do you feel like dressing up kind of helps too? Because for me, I remember when I was in graduate school and I'm just going to school. Who do I need to look good for? But I didn't feel good about myself. But then I noticed like I had this schoolmate who I'm still friends with, but like she was confident. And I'm like, why is she so confident? But she would like put on makeup, she would do her hair. Like she really took care of herself. And it motivated me because it's like, oh man, like she feels so good about herself. So then I started like just caring a little bit more about like the way I looked. And I noticed that it helped me to feel better. And then like you get compliments too. And that can help you feel better too. So do you notice like how you feel when you have makeup and you're like you're really confident in what you wear versus like if you're just, I don't know, in like sweatpants or something and no makeup?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in like if you look good, you feel good. So it's like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, who wouldn't want compliments? Like, oh my gosh, your makeup
Mm-hmm.
look flawless today. Like that makes you feel good because all that time you put into putting that makeup on your face, it's not just like
Yeah,
a 2 minute type thing. It's like half an hour
right.
or even like, yeah, right. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh wow, like someone complimented me today. They see the work that I put in my face, or like even like let's say
Yeah.
I were to dress up. Um, it just
Mm-hmm.
makes me feel, I guess, more beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to all of our viewers and listeners, try that. If you're feeling, we're not saying like go out and buy a bunch of makeup or go buy all these new clothes, but just like spending a little extra time on yourself, like doing your hair or adding mascara, and see if you notice a difference when you look good, if you feel good too.
Hmm.
I feel like we had that conversation. I feel like I was like, Jessica, your makeup looks flawless. And I was like, what do you use? Was that
Yeah,
you? Were we having the
that was
conversation?
me. Yeah, no,
Okay.
yeah, we had that conversation. I think it was during our live with Xiong, and you said that to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like wow, like I felt confident. I felt like, wow,
Yeah.
like someone noticed my hard work today. Someone noticed, my makeup. So I think just taking like what you said, Pam, taking that extra time to take care of yourself, it more than just the confidence, it helps boost your mental health too. So
Hmm.
yeah, do what
Yeah.
you think is best for you, even if that means, waking up at like 15, 30 minutes earlier so that way you can make yourself
Hmm.
look good or pamper yourself up.
Yeah. And I've heard like the older Hmong women, they'll be like, oh, you're married. Like, you don't need to do that. Or you have kids now. You don't need to do that. And so they think like you put makeup on only if you're single and you're trying to get married. But I'm like, no. And so if somebody said that to me before, I would be quiet, right? Like I would just not listen, or I might even feel shame or embarrassed. But now I would be like, no, I'm doing it for me. Like I'm doing it so I feel good. I'm looking good for me, not for anyone else. Doesn't matter if I'm married and
Hmm.
have kids, I can still look good for me, you know?
Yeah. And like to kind of add on to that, I feel like the reason why they say that is because, oh my gosh, it goes back to like the phone culture, right? Like just how women were taught to cater to their spouse. So it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, of course, these older women, they're not gonna know how it's like to take care of themselves because in their life, it has always been their kids and their husband. Like they were never in the picture.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
now it's a lot more different, as younger folks. we tend to put ourselves first too. Like we're also in this
Yeah,
picture with our family and our spouse. So I think when you try to explain to them, like, no, I'm not doing it for my husband, I'm doing it for myself, they're not going to understand because it was never
right.
in their books or in the definition.
Yeah, and I also think that, once you do get married and you start having kids, like all the moms out there, your priorities do shift and change. And it's like if you have a newborn and you're tired and you have to take care of all their needs, like sometimes we do, in a sense, let ourselves go or we stop taking care of ourselves. So I don't think that there's an issue going back to that. Sometimes I like, because I used to go clubbing a lot when I lived in the Twin Cities. It was like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing. Like every weekend we were clubbing. And I don't think that, I mean, I think there was the whole environment that made it really fun. But for me, my favorite part about going out was dressing up and like doing my
Hmm.
makeup because I felt like there were no other events to do makeup for and to feel good about yourself for. And so like the dressing up part and the makeup part, like that was really fun for me. And so I
Hmm.
liked going out, but it's just like now sometimes you're like, well, I don't have anything to do, so why do I need to dress up and why do I need to put on makeup? But we still can.
Hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Me too. Some days when, let's say, I don't work and it's just like a boring day, I don't have anything to do. The first thing I'll do is put makeup on and just take
Mhm.
photos. And there,
Yeah.
I think it's just a form of expression, really. Like makeup is a form of art, and I think you're just want to
Hmm.
express yourself or make yourself feel beautiful or feel more confident in your own skin. You can put makeup on a random day or even dress up. Just go on a walk or something. Dress up to go on a walk.
Yeah. Okay, what would you say to a person who they did put on makeup? They put on makeup, they have clothes that they're feeling good in, but like they still feel like they don't feel confident or they feel like, oh, I should just wipe this off. Like this isn't me, or like there's just a disconnect. What would you say to that person
Hmm.
who's feeling less confident?
Yeah. If makeup and dressing up isn't what you feel connected to, I would say to not force it. Because we
Mhm.
want things to feel natural, right? So let's say if you feel more comfortable in like pajama pants or, shorts and with a bare face,
Hmm.
that's totally fine. Maybe your definition of confidence isn't like about the physical part
Yeah.
of yourself, more so the mental or emotional part. So even if it's not the physical part and if it does not work for you, that's totally fine. There are other ways that you can do or other things, activities you can do to take care of yourself to feel more confident too.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you bring that up because I think even like like I think of the Hmong women that don't speak English. I think that if they can find other areas that they're good at, like maybe they're an amazing cook. Maybe they are
Hmm.
great at sewing. Or maybe like once they get their driver's license, like even these small mini accomplishments can help make us more feel more confident. So again, like you said, it's not just in the physical, it could be other things that we do that help us to feel confident.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like even my grandma, she's
Yeah.
she's never worn makeup ever in her life, but she feels confident whenever she cooks food and we still eat it. It just makes her
Uh-huh.
feel loved. Yeah. So just little things like that.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Oh. Okay, so I want to kind of go back to like finding your voice. Tell me about a time that you spoke up and it was received well, or like you did feel heard.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, like what I said before, my partner and I, we've been together for quite some time now. So we recently found a way that worked for us in terms of like our
Hmm.
communication styles. Um, yeah, I think the reason why what I said to my partner was received well was because I received whatever he was saying well. So it has to reciprocate,
Mm.
it's not just like a one-way thing. So
Hmm.
like what you said earlier, I use a lot of I statements now. And the thing that I learned, especially working with Project Resiliency, is to use the ORS skills. I don't know if you heard of it, but basically what you do is you kind of like rephrase whatever your partner said so that way they know that you were listening to them. So
Okay.
if he were to tell me something, I will rephrase it, just so that way it reassures him that I did listen. And then that way he's intrigued, like, oh, she is listening to me. So then when I tell him how I feel, or the way how I think, he takes it well. So I think it just depends. So basically, what I'm trying to say is whatever you give, you will receive.
Mm. Yeah, so if you're listening and you're making them feel understood, then they're more likely to listen to you, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do those reflection statements, and I try to teach those to people that I come across. I always tell them to like pay attention to the emotion behind what they're saying, um, and use their own words, right? And so if I'm like, oh, Jessica, I had such a hard day. Like my boss was on my nerves and like I was hungry and now I'm tired and I just feel so exhausted. If you just tell me like, oh, dang, your boss was on you, you're tired, like you had a hard day, then I'm gonna be like, yeah, you get me, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you're practicing this, you just summarize what the person's saying, just feed them back what they're telling you. And so use their words, but I think the more attuned you get with a person, like you can state their emotion even if they haven't said it. And so, like, for example,
Mm-hmm.
guys, they're not going to say, like, oh, I'm sad. But then, like, if my
Mm-hmm.
husband came to me and he said, like, oh, yeah, this is what this person said, then you can pretend to be a therapist and be like, oh, yeah, that sounds really sad. Like, I would be really sad about that and see if they bite. And maybe they, no, I'm not sad.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not sad. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I do that with my partner all the time. When he tells me something, I'm like, I would try to like, I don't want to say instigate because not the right word, but I would say I'll try
Yeah.
to like dive in deeper because I feel like
Yeah.
the words sad, mad, um, you know, angry, there's a more difficult underlying emotion that
Hmm.
a, an individual that it's hard for an individual to express. So
Hmm.
whenever like my partner will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I'm feeling so mad today because so and so and so," I'll be like, "Oh, so why do you feel this way?" And then you kind of dive in deeper, and then the next thing you know,
Yeah.
we're talking about him being sad because he lost his wallet like a couple of days ago or something. So, like
Yeah.
all of these emotions,
Yeah.
yeah, they pile up, but the
Hmm.
thing is, you really need to get to the bottom of it. So, yeah.
For sure. I want to go back to something that you said earlier that kind of stuck with me because you were saying like sometimes when you're speaking, people don't really listen, but it's almost like you have your story and you know your story. But like sometimes we're like, yeah, we know our story, so they can spin a false narrative about us and it's fine. But then sometimes we do need to speak up because I think being a Hmong woman, like I've been sharing with people, okay, if your mother-in-law or mom or someone in your family is like, oh, look at the house is dirty, like she's such a lazy person, if you're like, whatever, that's not even worth my energy. If you don't say anything, then if you have peace, that's great. But for me, I'm learning like there are certain times where you need to speak up. Because if you don't speak up, then they're like, yep, see, they're lazy. That's why they didn't speak up. But then if
Hmm.
you do speak up, they're like, yeah, look at they're such a bad person. They're like yelling at us or whatever, which I'm not telling you to yell. But I think like
Yeah.
sometimes you're in a lose-lose situation that you do need to speak up and you do need to correct people or you do need to like check people in a kind way, in a good way. But I'm just
Hmm.
saying like that's what I mean when like find our voice, right? We need to pick our battles, what's going to be worth it, what's not.
Hmm.
But I think like if people are misunderstanding you, you have a voice, like clarify, like don't let them get away with whatever narrative they're trying to put out. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it just varies on just like it varies on the way how you think or the way how you take things. Me
Hmm.
personally, I'm a person where I don't like to invest my energy into something that I think will not benefit me. So even if
Hmm.
that means like, confronting a narrative, like a wrong narrative, I tend
Hmm.
to wonder like, what's the point of telling or confronting this person about the narrative that they have on me when they already have this narrative about me that before they even know who I am. But it's true,
Yeah.
sometimes it does get tiring because it's like what is it? Like it gets tiring to kind of prove that person that no, like this narrative is not me. The narrative that you're thinking about
Hmm.
is not me. It gets tiring to prove it to them all the time. So for me, I'm a
Yeah.
person where I think I'm okay with like not battling that situation. And I feel like that is me voicing my own opinion too. Um,
Hmm.
because sometimes silence is stronger than, you know, talking to, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. And so I think choosing our battles and choosing wisely. So if you're trying to be rational with an irrational person, it's just going to be a waste of time and energy, right? But
Hmm.
I think in my specific situation, like this person always had a narrative. They always had a reason, or they interpreted what I did or didn't do. And and along with a lot of people, let them get away with it. Like they just spewed whatever came out of their mouth, and whether people
Hmm.
believed it or not, like they just kept talking. Um, and then I think I got to a point where I was just like, no, I'm gonna push back, or no, I'm gonna challenge that. And so when this person said something, like I brought it up to other people and people that this person respected, and I was like, I really don't appreciate this. If you want me to go talk to that person, it's probably not going to be pretty. So I would rather you say this. And it was almost like a warning, like not like I was threatening, but it was just like, I don't appreciate you saying this. This isn't true. And then there was at least three people that I told that went back to that person and was like, hey,
Hmm.
like this is what we heard. This is what Pam said. Um, I don't think you should be saying that, or that's not true. And so it was like three people checked her, and then like I don't know that that necessarily stopped her, but I think now this person is more cautious around me. And when they say and do
Hmm.
things, they're more cautious. And so that's all I want is just like respect. So yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not worth it, but sometimes it is. And so I think in us speaking up, people get to know our limits too, right? And so it's like
Yeah.
if no one ever told her that that's not acceptable, then they're going to keep doing it. But then because I had three people check her and I let her know, hey, like this is not acceptable. Um, this person is more cautious and they're more aware of like what they're saying. And that's all I want. Again, it's just
Hmm.
the mutual respect. So again, it just depends on like the circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. No, I understand what you're saying. Definitely, like in your experience, right? I mean, I have something similar that happened to me too when I was younger.
Mhm.
I had this person that kept, just poking at me, like kept making fun of me. It was my
Yeah.
cousin, it was a boy. He kept doing
Hmm.
things and I didn't like it. But I didn't know how to, I guess say the things that I needed to say for him to back off until one day
Hmm.
I just kind of exploded. And I think after seeing that, he understood like, okay, maybe I should stop. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like what you said, sometimes you do just need to voice your own opinion, like just that one time for them to know that, oh dang, like whatever I'm saying about this person, it's getting back to them. So I gotta stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And that's not going to work with everybody, but I think like
Hmm.
if we can use our voice, because who's going to advocate for us? Who's going to be the one and even if people do advocate for us, like sometimes they don't know exactly what we're feeling, and so they don't even say the right thing. In this case,
Hmm.
it was not good for me to talk to this person because I know that I would have been very angry. And so for me, it was
Hmm.
better for me to talk to these other three people to send word back to them. But yeah, like for me, when I was younger, I used to be so afraid of confrontation, I think, which was another reason why I didn't use my voice. Because in my family, there was a lot of yelling and arguing,
Mhm.
and like people rarely had calm conversations, and people got angry very fast. And so for me, I'm like, I don't want to add to that, so I'm just gonna be quiet. So I was quiet a lot of my life. Like I'm a talker, but then like when it's conflict, I usually just freeze. I don't say a whole lot. Um, and then I would tell trusted people like, "Oh yeah, this really hurts me," or "This makes me sad," or "This is what they're doing." And then I would have people want to, because they cared about me, they would want to speak up for me. And sometimes I felt like, "Oh wow, like they're speaking up, so I'm getting this addressed." But then sometimes it would backfire because they wouldn't say the right thing,
Mhm.
right? And so a prime
Yeah.
example would be like my husband and my mother-in-law. And so like if my mother-in-law said or did something and I talked to my husband about it, and then he goes back and tells his mom, like maybe he says it wrong, or maybe like he doesn't have the full story, and then they take it wrong, and then it comes back wrong. So I'm learning as I'm finding my voice and using it, like it's better for me to speak for myself than to have somebody else speak for me. Because initially when somebody else speaks for you, it takes your anxiety down, like, whew, I dodged a bullet, or like I don't have to confront this person. Somebody so and so said it for me. But then sometimes like they say it wrong, or they don't have the full story, and then it gets
Mhm.
misinterpreted. So then sometimes like it's just
Mhm.
better for us to speak up for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. There was definitely a time, like kind of similar to you. I grew up in a household where there's a lot of yelling. So
Hmm.
talking in like a more softer tone was like not normal in my family. So the thing is
Hmm.
that we would always yell, try to overtalk each other. And I think that's probably why even now, like I'm afraid to confront people because I'm scared that part of me will come out too. So sometimes I choose to
Hmm.
keep quiet, right? So there was a time when, let's say, I had a disagreement with a friend, and it was my first
Hmm.
time having a disagreement with a friend, and I did not know how to process that. Um,
Yeah.
so what I did was, I would talk to another, like a mutual friend of ours, and that friend went to go tell the other friend, and then things get messy because you
Yes.
have a person advocating for you, but they don't. Yeah, I think like the people, they just kind of what is it, twist words around, or they don't understand the
Hmm.
full story. They don't understand how you're
Hmm.
feeling. So what had happened was, after all that the messiness where it occurred, I had just
Hmm.
pulled my friend that I had the issue with aside, and I was like, you know what, let's just talk it out. And so I
Yeah.
think from that situation, I realized I need to fight my own battles instead of having other people fight it for me,
Mm.
because they're not going to fight the battles, my battles, the way how I want to fight it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes we're forced to like find our own voice, or we're like forced to confront, because sometimes the way we do things in the past, it doesn't work for us anymore. And so yeah, that I
Hmm.
just like feel like that could have been really hard and really scary to pull this person aside, but
Yeah.
then you did it, and you were able to hopefully clarify things.
Hmm. Yeah, it took a lot of courage and energy out of me, but it also opened a door to understanding that, wow, like I can talk to people about my feelings. I can
Hmm.
confront people about how they made me feel without being disrespectful about it or without yelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
What would you say for the people who are like shy and timid, and they're practicing speaking up, but then like they're not received, and then they're just like, "Oh, it's too much work. It's not worth it. Forget it. Like I'm just gonna stop trying." Like, how would you encourage them?
Yeah, I mean, I've been there. I would say
Yeah.
for me, I something that had worked for me was just might be cringe to say, but I talk to myself in the mirror, you know. Um,
Hmm.
not not every day, but then like once in a while I'll talk to myself in the mirror, or even journaling helps.
Hmm.
I just journal a lot, And I think that's also a way to kind of take the weight off my shoulders. And then on top of that, I think it's just a lot of self-reassurance that like if you don't do it, like for example, if you don't confront this person or tell this person how they feel, if
Hmm.
if tomorrow were to not exist, would you regret it? You know, and it's like if you do regret it, then speak up about it, you know, because they will not know if you don't say anything. So a lot comes with, you know, self-reflection, um, a lot of journaling, a lot of just self-reassurance from my perspective and my experiences.
Yeah, I love journaling. I think that people can get intimidated by journaling because they think like they need to write complete sentences and have correct grammar and they need to write every day in there. And they just have this idea of what journaling is supposed to be. But I think if we can just take the pressure off, like some people, they like cuss in their journal because they get so mad, they just
Yeah.
cuss in their journal and that's the way that they can get it out. Um, so journaling is what you want it to be. It could be you can write in there once a month or only when you're angry, or you can write what you feel. But I love journaling, especially putting pen to paper. There's something very therapeutic about that, but also it helps you to formulate your thoughts. Because, as Hmong women, we're not often asked, like, oh, what do you think? What do you want to do? What are your needs? And so sometimes we don't know. Like, if I asked you, yeah, like what do you want from that relationship? Sometimes we don't know because no one's ever asked us. But then if we can journal and we can write it down, it's helpful because it helps us to piece together our thoughts and to put it down on paper. So I love journaling. I think that's such a great tool.
Yeah, for sure. And like sometimes it doesn't even have to be words, you know, you can draw in there too. It could be like an art journal or something, whatever you feel is more comfortable or the best way to express your own emotions. Um, Also journaling is a way to, I guess, see your own growth. You know, it's like a personal
Hmm.
receipt that you keep, you know, so it's like
Yeah.
sometimes it feels good. Sometimes it feels good to look back and just reread like your first journal entry and be like, oh wow, like I've grown so much from the way how I thought back then. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah. It's like you see your own progress. And I've done
Hmm.
that too. Like I'll reread through old journals and things like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I was feeling that. Or like, why was I so worried about that? Right? Like looking back, it was so big back then, but right now it's not a big deal. So yeah, journaling,
Hmm.
I just like the viewers and listeners, I would say try it. Try journaling. And then if you're worried people are gonna find it, just rip it up. Like write something down and then
Yeah.
rip it up or do something with it if you're worried about people reading it. But I think it's hard for us to find our voice and to speak up if we don't know what we're feeling. So we can't communicate
Hmm.
what we don't have words to. And so I think, again, that's why journaling is so helpful. So sometimes in journaling, we need to unpack what we're feeling and what we're thinking, right? And so, like, if an event happened where you felt betrayed or you felt this, or maybe you got mad, but you're like, well, that's such a little issue. Like, why am I so mad? Maybe we can journal and to be like, unpack it. Like, okay, why am I mad? How did that make me feel? Maybe that's related to other things this person has done to make me feel that way. Maybe I feel angry, but what's beneath that? Is it hurt? Is it betrayal? Is it embarrassment? Is it shame? What
Hmm.
are all these things that I'm feeling?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't start picking up journaling until I would say my senior year in high school. That's when I started picking it up. And
Hmm.
I feel like that was such a huge transition, you know, during my senior year in high school and then becoming a freshman in college. I had a lot of like self-identity questions that I couldn't like
Hmm.
answer. And so during that period of my life, I was very confused, very lost. So just like writing down my thoughts and my emotions, it really helped guide me to the direction that I wanted to go. So I would say
Hmm.
definitely do try journaling. Um, if if you want to be more creative, like I said, use stickers to make it look pretty if you want. I don't know, it's totally up to you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm all about like colored gel pens and like writing in different colors and yeah,
Yeah.
make it a fun thing, right? Just not like don't make it just a task where you feel obligated to do it, but I think the more
Hmm.
people do it, they will begin to enjoy it.
Hmm. for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So final question. When we talk about like finding your voice and we talk about confidence, and now we're like even talking about being able to speak up, like if you have tried with a person and you're like speaking up, you're using I statements and you're not being heard, like what other approach? Like let's say this is something someone you care about, not just like a coworker, like I don't care, they're not my friend. What if you really care about them, but like the I statements and all that isn't working? What other approach would you tell them?
Yeah. Um, I think for me, I would ask them like, what do they need right now? You know, if that's
Mm-hmm.
space, I'll give it to them. If they just need a vent, I'll listen. So it's like maybe
Okay.
sometimes your friends or your spouse or your siblings, they just want to talk. Like maybe they don't want you to talk, they might just want you to listen. So
Yeah.
sometimes asking them like, okay, apparently the I statements are not working right now, so what would you like me to do? You know, kind of giving
Mm-hmm.
them that open door, like have them make the decision. And if that means, give them their space, give them their space a couple hours later, be like, hey, are you ready to talk about it? We can come back and talk about it. Or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would say try that. So ask them what they want and then always come back and talk about it because don't ever push it to the side because it will just come up again.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Right.
and yeah, I would say those two things.
Okay. So it's almost like you're saying again, meet their needs. Like, okay, if they're in a place where they just can't hear, then you're about like, well, what are their needs or what do they need right now? And hopefully you can circle back to what you need to talk about and they'll be in a space where they can hear you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I would also add that sometimes writing a letter or a text message can be helpful. Like sometimes text messages are not helpful because you don't know what the tone is, right? And so if I'm waiting for you and I'm like, Jessica, where are you? Like sometimes it could be like, oh, Jessica, where are you? Or where are you? Like we don't know the tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what I like about letters is that like especially if you're afraid of confrontation, is you don't have that face to face, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
if I'm like Jessica, like let's say you're having a hard day and I'm like Jessica, like I really need to talk to you about this like agree like disagreement we had the other day. I'm like confronting you and then maybe you feel attacked and you don't have space and you haven't even sorted your thoughts. But I think like and then what if I do say that and I'm afraid if I'm already afraid of confrontation and then you say something and that I don't know what I'm gonna say after you say that. Like we don't know what
Mm-hmm.
our rebuttal will be, right? And so if I say like, "Hey Jessica, I really don't appreciate you talking to me about this, like talking to this person about me. I wish you would just come to me." And then if you were like, "No, I don't want to come to you," like what I said is true.
Mm-hmm.
And then how am I going to respond to that, right? And so I think like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if we write things in a letter we give ourselves space so that we don't have to directly answer what they want to say to us. And then we also give them
Mm-hmm.
space that they don't have to like respond right away to what we are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives us both time to cool down. So I think like writing a letter or an email would be helpful. And I think sometimes when people just aren't hearing you, um, sometimes trying a different method or approach can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I never thought of writing a letter, to be honest. So, but then that's a really good method. I should try that. So
Yeah.
I would, I would also like to add, like, even if it's not like a letter, maybe just like doing like voice memos, just recording
Mhm.
yourself talking and then sending it to them. So that way they don't misinterpret your tone. I think that's also another
Oh,
way,
yeah.
another method you can use as well.
That's true. That's a good idea. I don't do that enough, but I have friends who are like, they'll voice memo me, and I like hearing their voice and stuff like that because they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, Pam, this is just too much to text. So let me just tell you." But
Yeah.
I never really send it back. So that's another good way.
hmm
All right. Any final words for our viewers or our listeners?
Um, well, first, I just want to say thank you, Pam, for, inviting me onto your podcast. I felt like this was literally a therapy session for me. And I really enjoyed our conversation. I feel like we always have really good conversations. And to the audience, I know finding your own voice, it can be really draining sometimes, but it is totally worth it. Take your time, don't go on anybody else's timeline. And finding your voice, don't be in a rush to find it. Um, because when you're in a rush to find it, maybe you'll find your voice in like, I guess like a bad timing or like a
Hmm.
wrong place, wrong time type thing. So I would
Right.
say if if you try the methods that Pam and I have suggested on here, and it still does not work out, there's a lot more methods out there for you. Each individual have their we're all different, so we have our own methods that work for us individually. So don't feel discouraged just because you tried something that was mentioned here and it does not work out for you. Keep trying because you're not alone. And yeah, I guess that's my last remark, and I had so much fun.
I love that. Yes. Tell our viewers, don't give up. Keep trying,
Mhm.
find your own like pace and your own groove, and eventually it will just come, and the more you speak up, you'll be more and more confident. So thank you. I loved having you on, Jessica. I knew I wanted you
Yeah.
on, so thank you for making time for me. Yeah, and I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Yes, I will be more than willing to be open to that.
Thank you.